tells him to do the exact opposite of what he's trying to do. How much of a persecution that would be upon him. But as we see at the end of Job, he ends up persevering through. And it said that he gained, he had 14,000 sheep, he had 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen and donkeys. He got more sons and daughters, and it said that his daughters were the most beautiful daughters that in all of Canada that you could find. So that is that idea of God blessing you, but like I said, the idea that people expect it now. Thing is that, like I said, where it says that thieves break in and steal and moth and rust corrupt, we are supposed to place our treasures in a place where thieves cannot steal, nor can moth and rust corrupt. So this is looking to storing our treasures in heaven. Now, the last one I have, the definition for steadfast, is the definition of perseverance. And this is the idea of persevering to the end. And the verse I have here is Galatians chapter 5, and I'll be starting in verse 8. If you'd like to turn there, Galatians chapter 5, and I'll be starting in verse 8. Galatians 5, in verse 8, it says, For he who sows to his flesh will of the flesh reap corruption, but he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially to those who are the household of faith. So this idea of that not growing weary while we're here, that we are supposed to work for the Lord, that after baptism is not the end of a Christian's life. That is just the beginning. That is the first step in that into having a Christian life, is that the idea of doing good unto others. And as it says that if we do not grow weary, we will, for in due season we shall reap. So this is the idea of persevering to the end. You know, when harvest time is just right around the corner. My grandpa, being a farmer himself, he's working on all the tractors and trying to get everything in order, where he's having a better season this year, but last year was difficult. We had record rainfall, and it seemed all the crops just seemed to die because of all the flooding. Now, for a farmer, that can be very hard hit to you, as you look to that as your livelihood, and that you rely on that to support you. You know, same here, as a Christian, we are out for the harvest. We are God's workers in bringing souls unto Christ. Like I quoted this preacher in our Bible study, but where he takes his kids to bed and says, what are the goals of the Christian? First, get yourself to heaven, and two, take as many people with you. So it's the job of the Christian to take as many people with them. And I would like to look at Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews chapter 12, and I'll be starting at the beginning of the chapter in verse 1. Hebrews 12, and starting in verse 1. And there it reads, Therefore we also, since we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which so easily ensnare us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. He who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. As I said in Bible study, that Jesus is supposed to be our role model, that he went through the exact same things we are going through. The cross was his ultimate test. This was probably the hardest test that he had in this life, and it says that enduring the cross, he became the author and finisher of our faith. So if he was able to endure it, we should be able to also. If we're trying to pursue and become more like Christ, that we should be able to bear our own cross and be able to proceed to the end. But I'd like to look at this last example of enduring to the end. Not only is Jesus an example of enduring to the end, but I want to look at Paul, where Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, Paul goes through this list of things in which he had to endure while going out to the churches of Asia to present the gospel unto those churches. And you think a messenger of God, that God wants them to give it to him, that it should be easy, but as you read Paul's account, that you see that he had quite more to go through than most of what we have to. And I'm going to start reading verse 22. And it says, are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they the seed of Abraham? So am I. Are they the ministries of Christ? I speak as a fool. I am more, and labors more abundant, and stripes above measure, in prison more frequently, in death often. For from the Jews 5 times I received 40 stripes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and day I have been in the deep. In journeys often, in perils of water, in perils of robbers. Excuse me. In perils of my own countrymen, in perils of the Gentiles, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren, in weariness and toil and sleeplessness, often, in hunger and thirst and fasting, often, in cold and nakedness, besides the other things, what come upon me daily, my deep concern for all the churches. So you can see that Paul had to endure quite a bit to be able to go out and present the gospel to the churches throughout Asia Minor and Greece, and eventually up to Rome and Italy, where in 2 Timothy verse 4, he writes his last encouraging letter to a young Christian man named Timothy, which he sent out to help him with the works of these churches. But in 2 Timothy 4:6, it says, for I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Finally there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give me on that day, not to me only, but also to those who have loved his appearing. So even though Paul went through all these different trials, yet how many of us would like to say when we're on our deathbed about ready to pass, that we would be able to say with confidence what Paul was able to say to Timothy in these 3 verses here, is that idea that he was able, even despite all these trials in which he went through, he was able to endure to the end. So the idea of being steadfast and immovable and always abounding in the work of the Lord, that is the whole life of a Christian, is being able, once you have been saved, to stay saved. And not only to stay saved, but to be able to bring others to Christ as well, is the job of a Christian. So here, as we being steadfast is being loyal. We need to be loyal to God and to him only, not following, like as Israel turned away to idolatry. Now, idolatry to Americans today is different than the idolatries in which Israel turned to. In America, idolatry could be, it could be our jobs. The people who deliberately take